Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking about pointless gaming controversies. Today specifically with the new video game that just came out from Obsidian Entertainment and Xbox Game Studios, Avowed. This video isn't being created in order to shill for Avowed or in order to unnecessarily hate on Avowed. I just want to bring up the unnecessary controversy that people are creating around this game and around other video games instead of actually focusing on the parts of Avowed that should be criticized, and instead just nitpicking for absolutely very little reason. For example, a lot of comparisons that you'll see online right now are people comparing Avowed to Skyrim, specifically with the visual effects on how the magic works or in how melee combat works, just comparing it unnecessarily. And in my opinion, I feel like this is just a minute comparison to have because it's two completely different engines, it's two completely different developers, and unlike Unreal Engine 5, the creation engine is a physics-based engine, and we've seen that because of all the wacky stuff that can happen in Bethesda's video games. And this isn't to defend Avowed on their lack of just, the minute little details that should be in their games, like with the visual effects, but I feel like better comparisons could be made comparing to Avowed. Say, for example, The Outer Worlds, a game made by Obsidian and a game that is on the Unreal Engine. One big example that I have on a huge downgrade, at least in my opinion, is that, for example, Avowed does not have the pickpocketing option, where you can't sneak up behind someone and steal something from their inventory. The Outer Worlds has this option. Or, for example, how Avowed was being developed for almost 6 years, and no one at Obsidian decided, hey, let's make a lockpicking minigame. Like, 6 years of development time, and none of you can make a lockpicking minigame, something so small, but that would add so much depth to the game. And then you'll have people comparing Avowed to Skyrim and calling it the so-called Skyrim killer, even though no one at Obsidian ever wanted to call it a Skyrim killer. In fact, people at Obsidian wanted to distance it away from Skyrim as much as possible. And you'll have creators put out videos that are called Avowed flops hard on release day, Obsidian and Microsoft in full-on panic mode, this game feels like it's dead on arrival. Now, I would be one to call the people who say that Avowed is dead on arrival just stupid, because the game is nowhere near dead on arrival. It's actually surpassing The Outer Worlds, their last game that they really put out that was one of their big RPGs, player count on Steam, and we also have to take into account PC Game Pass, and Avowed is still surpassing, and Avowed even went top selling on the Steam store globally for a short time. And I know you might be thinking, hey, Dragon Age the Veilguard also sold, top globally on Steam for a short time, and it did fail, and it in fact did fail, but the comparison is that people are saying it's dead on arrival. Dragon Age the Veilguard was not dead on arrival. It had a huge player base behind it at launch, and even though now obviously it is very much dead and the player base is not there, and EA has probably lost hundreds of millions of dollars on the project, this is not a game that is dead on arrival. We will see how it handles over the long term if Microsoft puts out player numbers like it surpasses 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 million players. We don't know. It could be a huge RPG. We don't know until Microsoft shows us the player numbers. But all we have right now is the Steam charts and is the Steam player numbers. We don't have Xbox PC Game Pass members, we don't have Xbox console player members, we don't have any of that. We're running straight off of the Steam player count. And then leading back into Avowed's player numbers, we have someone who posts, games on Game Pass do worse on Steam. Of course Avowed's numbers on Steam are gonna do bad. Tell that to Starfield, which was also day one Game Pass launch and had 330,000 players on Steam. Now, I get that 100%. Avowed is created by Obsidian, which is not a studio the size of Bethesda, which is not a studio on the same pedigree as Bethesda, and also Bethesda is much more of a known name. Everybody loses their shit when Bethesda releases anything. Obsidian, that's not the same case. Say what you will about Obsidian and Fallout New Vegas, but you can't really compare Bethesda to Obsidian. Like, you just can't. Bethesda made Fallout 4, that game made almost $1 billion in a weekend, made Skyrim, and they've sold it like 4 or 5 times over, and Obsidian's big claim to fame is Fallout New Vegas, an intellectual property that they don't even own. Yes, arguably they made the best Fallout game, but that doesn't mean it's an extremely successful title that's going to get their name out there like Bethesda did with Fallout 4, Fallout 3, and Skyrim and Oblivion. And don't worry, I'm not just defending Avowed either. We'll have people on Twitter and even in the internet just go, me enjoying Avowed while all the haters get mad. See, I find this just a bit disingenuous, because calling anyone who doesn't like Avowed, or anyone who has criticism of Avowed a hater, is plain, it's stupid. It's stupid. Now, if you're comparing visual effects, yeah, I can agree with that. But say if you have an actual criticism of the game, like the game crashes a lot, I'm not a fan of how they didn't optimize it well. The PC performance is kind of mediocre. Or, you know what, like where's the pickpocketing mechanic that was in the Outer Worlds? Why isn't that here? It took you double the time to make Avowed. Where are the basic RPG mechanics that we expect from previous games that you literally made? Or where are the romance options that realistically should be in this game, considering that it took you guys 6 years to develop this project, and yet we still don't have 4 romance options for the 4 companions you added to this game. And again, one of them is kind of dating another character, so you can't really do that. But what, you can't have 3 romance options? Or you, like, 6 years of development time. And for companions, all they really are bodyguards with some funny dialogue. And I get that. But they're not that useful. Even in combat, they aren't that useful. So other than you arguing, oh, we wanted to do it right if we were gonna do it, why not try it? Like, why bother just not doing it? Like, I don't know if it's laziness or if it's incompetence at that point, because now you're just not adding basic things that have been in so many RPG games. And I feel like this is more of a criticism than the visual effects, because the visual effects comes down to the engine. This is something that anybody could develop, and on any engine. Bethesda has done it, Larian has done it, literally BioWare did it with Dragon Age of Valgard, and even though those romance options sucked, they still did it. And there are even criticisms that I'm on the fence about, like with Avowed, a lot of NPCs don't actually wander around the town. There's no day-night cycles in Avowed at all, like unless you go to camp and sleep and stuff like that. The day and night aren't going to change unless you manually do it. But the response I would have to this is that Avowed was supposed to be a multiplayer project. So I'm not surprised that NPCs weren't really programmed to move around. You still can find some NPCs walking around, but not to the extent of Fallout 4, Skyrim, even like Baldur's Gate, for example, where you will see people walking around. So I'm kind of on the fence about this. I'm sure the people who do point this out probably actually don't know that the game used to be multiplayer, or else they would have pointed that out. But this is a criticism that I see, again, 6 years, and you couldn't program NPCs to walk around. Like, it seems simple. Like, just give them paths to walk in a circle. Something as simple as that makes the game feel more alive. And another criticism that I've seen a lot of people make is that the guards in the game, like if they're guarding doors or if they're guarding the gates, they don't actually move. So if you bring enemies towards them, they're just gonna stand there. So you can't say, like, for example, in Skyrim or Fallout, you can't bring enemies towards a armed guard and they'll fight with you. No, they'll just stand there. And they'll make ambient noises, and you have to fight all the enemies. And again, because Avowed used to be a multiplayer project, I'm not surprised that a lot of these things aren't coded in like a single-player game. But then you have a criticism, like, again, y'all had 6 years, you couldn't code in NPCs that just target an enemy and fight? Like, I feel like this would be basic. It feels like they were just short-sighted on development. Like, I want to know how long it did take for them to develop Avowed as it is. Because there's no way 6 years of development time. And now Avowed isn't like a short game either. Like, I spent 35 hours in my first playthrough, really enjoyed it, I did. But I do have to take a look at all these criticisms that are being brought forward for Avowed. And look, if a game like The Outer Worlds 2 has these same issues, there's gonna be problems. Something as simple as people not walking around a town. It's small, but it adds up. When we have no lockpicking, no pickpocketing, no NPCs walking around, guards don't interact, so many tiny little things, like no day-night cycle, it's just all the small things that add up into a bunch of problems. And these are the criticisms that I feel like are fair. Not the visual effects because of the engine or anything like that, and even to an extent, again, the NPCs walking around, it's the coding, right? So we can't really get around that. But again, you've had 6 years of development time, so it's hard to try to alleviate this or defend it when you've had 6 years and you're under Microsoft, which is a $2 trillion company. But then I also am going to give Avowed some praise because they have added something that a lot of RPGs actually don't have, which is a little lore kind of system that you're able to look at. So say certain characters will say a word like envoy, or like a certain person or a certain area, and you're actually able to press a button and then you're able to specifically look at what that is. So if it says envoy, it's like you are the envoy and it gives you the lore dump behind it. I think that's really interesting. I think that's cool. And I think a lot of future RPGs should actually implement that mechanic because it makes it easier for people, say, who put down a game, come back later and say, I can refresh myself during the actual dialogue. I don't have to look stuff up. I don't have to go through a codex, or I don't have to watch a video or even replay through the game. That is something I really like. But again, at the end of the day, a lot of these controversies around Avowed I feel like are pointless. They are. Like the ones with the visual effects, the player counts not being as big as Starfield, the player counts not being 100,000, so oh look, it's dead on arrival game, and the whole issue with the art director. If you choose not to play the game because of what the art director did or said, fair enough. I'm not going to fault you for that. That is your opinion. I still played the game. I enjoyed it. I wouldn't recommend you buying it, however, though. I made that clear in my own review where I stated that I was actually disappointed with a lot of Avowed, even though I did enjoy it. But I would say never buy this game at full $70 price. There's no way, like, the people at Obsidian thought this would be fully worth that price. This was 100% a Microsoft thing, like, hey, let's push this as a big AAA RPG, even though it's kind of like, at its realist, the biggest AA RPG I think I've ever seen. I want to thank you guys for watching this video. If you did enjoy and want to see more videos like this one, consider leaving a like, sharing, commenting, subscribing, and maybe even becoming a member if you so choose to get early access to all my videos, all that stuff said and done. Thank you all for watching. See you guys in the next video.